Welcome in. It is Big Ten Today. It's great to have you with us on this Friday. Dave Revson, Rick Pizzo, 6 days from football.
How far? You said 6 days.
6 days. I don't know if I reiterated that enough times.
You did. This is kind of the last unofficial Friday of summer for us. I know the calendar doesn't actually turn until the middle of September, right. But next Friday we will already be a night into football season. We'll have already had Big Ten games played here on the network on Thursday, getting ready for another one on Friday, and a full weekend on Saturday. I know we don't have any week 0 games this year. I actually kind of like it that way.
Yeah.
I like waiting until everybody is ready to go in the same 3 or 4 day span.
I'm not going to lie to you. Georgia Tech, Florida State might be a part of my weekend, though.
Okay, I'm not going to lie to you about that.
I'm fired up for some college football back on my television screen, but I'm with you. I kind of like where everyone starts on the same weekend. It has been fun in past years when we had the games in Ireland and whatnot, but man, I'm geeked up for it, and I think we ought to talk about it.
There's so many, right, intriguing storylines this year, including, I guess, the first and foremost being the fact that we have 18 schools, and we're going to see all 18 next weekend, Dave, starting Thursday night, going all the way through Sunday.
Yeah, it is our big story, that new look Big Ten, obviously the addition of UCLA, USC, Washington, and Oregon. Remember, no more divisions in the Big Ten. Top 2 teams play for the Big Ten title in Indy. So we're going to run through our top storylines for the upcoming season. And that's where it starts, Rick. To me, it's not just about big, though. It's about how good the Big Ten is going to be. You got 2 of the top 3 teams in the AP preseason poll, 4 of the top 9. The SEC is 4 of the top 9 as well. Notre Dame is the one team that's in there that's not in either one of the leagues. And I think this is what it's going to become. I mean, when we talk about competing at the very highest level of the sport, the Big Ten is going to be right there year in and year out. And that is part of what has me so excited. I mean, I think it's going to be cool to have these new stadiums and the new additions to the league. I mean, Autzen, Husky Stadium, the Coliseum, the Rose Bowl, it's remarkable. But to me, it's about competing for national championships, having elite teams year in and year out, and I think we're going to have that.
Well, the Power 5 is gone, right? And so now folks are referring to those leagues as the Power 4. It's really right now the Power 2. Right. It's the SEC and the Big Ten, and those are the teams and the leagues that are going to be competing for national championships. And in the first year of the 12-team playoff, those are the conferences that are going to be filling those 12 spots. It's without question that the majority of that 12-team field will come from the Big Ten and the SEC. The new additions to this league are unbelievable when you think about what Oregon has done the last couple of years and what Dan Lanning has coming back this year in Eugene. I know Washington is in a rebuild, but this is a team that played for the national title earlier in 2024. You throw USC in there. I believe they're the only underdog in week 1 from the Big Ten when they play LSU in that neutral site on Sunday. But I think if they get the quarterback play that Lincoln Riley expects from Miller Moss, this could be a team that right now is toward the bottom of the top 25 that I think could be higher than that when we get a couple of weeks in. So to your point, it's not just the quantity. It is the quality. And the quality of this league right now from top to bottom, coaches are raving about it right now. Let's hear what they have to say at the end of November. They may be singing a different song.
Right. One thing that I took away from our camp tour, and we're going to talk about this with Howard and Jerry later, is I think everyone's pretty good. Like, there were no teams that we walked away from and just kind of said, I don't know. USC, you bring up Miller Moss. I think he's going to be really good. I mean, just based on what we saw in the Holiday Bowl. To me, it's about the defense. But I think that year in and year out, USC is going to be good.
Yes.
Right. Like, I think I know they went through some unsteady years there. I think they'll be good. UCLA, let's not sleep on UCLA. I don't know what year 1 will look like with Deshaun Foster, and we'll talk about the new coaches here in a bit. But UCLA's won 8 games 3 straight years. I mean, I feel like for some reason they're an afterthought, and people are thinking about them more in terms of basketball. This program's been on pretty solid footing here over the last few years. So I'm excited about all those additions. You mentioned the 12-team playoff. Like, I just think there's so much more intrigue.
Totally agree.
So many more teams that are going to be in the discussion. And then what's the Big Ten race going to look like? Where we're just talking about the top 2 teams. The conference hasn't released a tiebreaker yet as to how that's going to work. I'm told that they will have that ready next week, which obviously you have to have it ready because we're going to start the season. But what's that going to look like? And what are those races going to be like as we go down the stretch? I just think bigger isn't always better. But I think in this case, bigger's better.
It most certainly is. And let's not sleep on the teams that have been in this league for a long time and have been fixtures at the top of the conference race. And to me, that's Ohio State this year that comes in as the highest ranked team in the AP preseason poll, just one spot ahead of Oregon. I think both you and I believe you get to see this team in person. You look at the roster that they have coming back. You look at the fact that Michigan is maybe in a little teeny bit of a rebuild from their roster, at least on the offensive side. And all the players that came back on the defensive side for Ohio State, it is setting up to be one of those years. It seems like for Ryan Day and company, and the players are embracing it. They're all saying, listen, we came back for a couple of reasons. Number one, to beat Michigan and get a pair of gold pants. And number two, to win the national title. They're not shying away from it. And I think that they have all the pieces to do exactly that.
It was pretty interesting when we sat down with Ryan Day at camp. We had this graphic coming into the interview with him that was talking about the best win percentage this century of coaches who have coached at least 50 games in college football. And number one was Ryan Day. And so we came out and I asked him a little bit about, hey, look, I understand last 3 years haven't gone exactly how you wanted to at the end. Do you take some pride in that number? And the answer was like, no.
I can hear the one-word answer, no.
None at all. Yeah. And I think that it speaks to what we're talking about. What I love about Ryan Day, Rick, is he does not shy away from any of this. I mean, they put together this roster with a goal of winning the national championship. They don't make any bones about it. What's happened the last few years, in their eyes, is not acceptable. And I get that. That includes a year of being in the college football playoff and really being one play away from beating a great, great team in the college football playoff in Georgia. So, I guess I just look at this and say, they're making it crystal clear what defines success for them. And I don't think it's anything short of winning a national championship. The defense was phenomenal when we were there. I mean, Chip Kelly was telling us, hey, we really love our offense, particularly, the run game, offensive line. We're having trouble sometimes getting the ball back to the line of scrimmage.
They have some of the best players in the country at all three levels of that defense. Yep. When you start to think about the guys that came back, JTT, Jack Sawyer, Denzel Burke, all those guys could have been high draft picks. And then you go out and you get the best transfer portal player in the country in Caleb Downs to fill in a secondary that's already loaded. I mean, Jim Knowles has to look inside that toolbox and feel like he's kind of a mad genius already.
Yes.
Now he has all the buttons to push. And it's just going to be so fun to watch. And there is so much buildup already. It's August, 22nd, 23rd? I forget what day it is.
23rd, I believe, yes.
October 12th, everybody is already getting ready for Ohio State's trip out to Eugene, and just how seismic that can be in the Big Ten race and for the national title picture.
It's incredible to think about that game and the fact that that's a regular season game.
Regular season Big Ten game.
I know, and I think that's what's so cool when we talk about, again, kind of going back to that original point of expansion. Yeah, it's great to have 18 teams, but it's the quality of the teams. And you talk about Ohio State, and I think as we go through the top storylines, I don't think you can talk about Ohio State this year without then kind of following that up with what does Michigan look like this year. And I'm interested in your take on this. Sharon Moore, I think they have a really good team. Like, we were just there 2-3 days ago at camp, and defensively, I think they'll really be good, particularly in the interior of that defensive line. I mean, they have two of the best players in America right there, probably the best tackle tandem in the country. Offense, maybe a little bit of a work in progress, particularly at the quarterback spot. I don't think it was really clear. Alex Orji kind of feels like the guy who will end up emerging there. But I guess I'm interested in, like, when you look at it, like, what do you think Michigan needs to do this year for people to be happy, for people to feel satisfied? To me, that's the most interesting question. I'm not asking so much about within the program. I'm asking about outside the program.
I think outside the program, if this team were to come back after losing J.J. McCarthy and Blake Corum and all the other guys and be in the mix for a college playoff berth, and if they got into the college football playoff, I think this year would be a massive success. Yeah. Even if they were to lose in the first round game, even if they were to be one of the 9 through 12 seeds and had to play on the road, I think this is a massive success. Coming off the national championship of a year ago, all the tumult with Jim Harbaugh deciding to leave and then the ensuing penalty that comes along doesn't necessarily affect this program this year, but it is part of the conversation. I just find it fascinating because I don't think there's a team right there in the country right now that people are more divided on. There are half of those who clearly believe, being in the preseason top 10 in the AP top 25, that believe that this Michigan team can do it. And then there are those on the other side who believe that they are way overrated, that there are too many question marks. We're going to find out early, though, because in previous years, Michigan has had a really soft non-conference schedule.
Yeah,
it
not
is
the case
anything
this time,
but soft in 2024. We'll probably know after week 2 whether this team has a legitimate shot to be part of the college football playoff.
Honestly, I think we know a little bit week 1.
Yeah, always a tough out.
Fresno State's a pretty good team. I understand, like Jeff Tedford, unfortunately, had the health issue and had to step down as the head coach. We all know he's a brilliant offensive mind. But Fresno State is one of those teams that people are talking about as being one of the better group of 5 teams this year. So I don't think it's unreasonable to think that that could be a challenging game if you are not a really good team. And I think there is some uncertainty surrounding Michigan. I will just tell you, at quarterback spot, I think is a question mark right now, as we reference. Like, defensively, they're going to be really good. They're really pleased with the skill position talent. They think they have some guys who are going to emerge. Colson Loveland is
probably the best tight end in the country.
Crazy good. Yeah. Crazy good.
They also
really
need Dave. Donovan Edwards has to stay healthy.
Yeah.
They don't have the depth behind him in terms of a running back room that can make defenses scared other than Edwards. So he absolutely needs to stay healthy. I think for Sharon Moore to have success in year 1. And it's hard to think of Sharon Moore as being a year 1 head coach, but obviously he is after all the time that he spent last year coaching this team while Jim Harbaugh was suspended. And he's not the only one, right? This is officially the first year for David Braun because he spent last year as the interim, but it certainly doesn't feel that way. There are so many first-year head coaches in the league this year, and not just because of the 4 teams that come in. Yes, Jed Fish makes the move, obviously, and Deshaun Foster as well. But there are personalities everywhere. You guys were at Indiana. I'm not sure there's a bigger personality than Kurt Cignetti. And there are some first-year head coaches that have expectations of veteran head coaches that have been at places that have won national championships, and others that are still trying to earn respect. It is a great storyline for us to follow throughout the course of the year.
I think it's going to be fantastic. We just visited with Jonathan Smith earlier this week. I got to tell you, and we said this in the camp show, he gives off some D'Antonio vibes. They're very different personalities, but just in kind of the way he comports himself, right? He's an understated guy. He kind of believes in, hey, we're going to coach him up and we're going to recruit players in the kind of circumference of the Midwest, around not far from Michigan State's campus. There are tons of great players here. We're going to develop guys. A lot of it rings true with kind of what we saw from Mark D'Antonio through the years. Jed Fish, in visiting with him, I was out there this summer, and he was basically saying, this was before fall camp, but he said, I don't know what I've got.
He's been really honest about it.
I think we're pretty good, but you don't know until guys are sweating next to one another and going through practice. I know our camp tour guys, I wasn't out at that stop, but they were impressed with what they saw at Washington. I think Foster's really interesting at UCLA, a guy who has such an incredible history there. So I think there's some incredible storylines. I'm really interested in Cignetti because I think their schedule's favorable.
It is. And he's won everywhere. And there is something about confidence and it being contagious with your team.
Yeah.
But for it to be contagious, you have to win some games early, right? So I think that for Indiana, especially early on when you're playing those non-conference games, this is a team where the non-conference and a coach for the non-conference that I think may be more important those first 3 games of the season than any other program in the Big Ten, because you are trying to flip the script. You're trying to completely change the narrative within your program as well as outside the program. And if you can do that with the transfers that you brought in, some guys coming from James Madison, a new quarterback as well, then yeah, you get to 4 or 5 wins early, and suddenly the entire thought process changes. You're not, we're Indiana football again. We are coached by a guy who has taken all these programs to heights they've never seen before. Why can't we be that team?
I think they have a chance to do that. I think they have a chance to get off to a really good start. And to your point, Kurt Cignetti, like everywhere the guy's been, he's never had a losing season in 13 years. Now, this is different. And he's got a lot of players he brought from JMU who they're going to be counting on. This is a major step up from James Madison. I say that with all due respect to a team that has played great football and maybe made the transition from FCS to FBS as well as any team
without a question
that we have ever seen do it. But it's different. It's different playing at this level. So fascinated to see how all those
I'll say this before we close out. I host the Monday Coaches Press Conference show I'm not sure any is going to be more entertaining each week than the press conference that Curt Cignetti holds.
You'll get some good quotes.
Yes.
You'll have some confidence that will come out.
Quotable quotes without question.
From Curt Cignetti, no question about it.